Well, it's been about 6 weeks since the last garden update that I did, and I just thought I'd give you kind of a final update showing pretty much a little bit of everything: the garden, what we've harvested, how we've kind of put it up for the winter, and I must say this has been the most productive gardening season ever. We've never had so many veggies from a garden. So, pretty much these videos start back a couple weeks ago after the last one left off. And here's some green tomatoes, and here's some of the Japanese cucumbers and other cucumbers that, basically we're getting a couple buckets a day out of the garden of good mixture of veggies. And the zucchinis were actually taking off and going wild. And we have been eating quite a few and trying to put up quite a few veggies, and we did have bumper crops of cucumbers and actually made a lot of pickles and got them put up, and a lot of these Japanese cucumbers that are really like an English cucumber, and they're really, really sweet tasting and nice. And it's just container after container of peppers from the garden, and just working on trying to fill the root cellar up for the winter. We did try to eat everything that we could and threw a lot of them on the grill, and every day with another bucket of beans or another bucket of cukes, or a couple baskets of tomatoes, and pretty much either just spread over the last 6 weeks. We had a lot of okra, and my wife's been cooking it up with mixing it with the eggplants and other veggies from the garden. And as we went along, the cart had to get bigger and bigger every day for the harvest of it, and we had to start getting a little bit creative with how much of it that we ate. But basically, we've never had as many tomatoes as we have this year. It was just every day, probably at least 50 pounds of them all summer long. We've been kind of trying to deal with them the best that we can. But as you'll see in a little while, we still have a ton left over there's no possible way that we can use. Everything was just so productive this year. And we had really just a beautiful mix of everything with no major problems with any of the plants that we planted. The tomatoes, we've been enjoying all the different flavors. I think we planted about 7 different varieties this year, and they all did good. The only one that I'm really a little bit upset with are those blue tomatoes that I planted. They just didn't turn out good, but I've also been harvesting seeds. Like here's coriander seeds for next year that I'm starting to dry up there, and we've just been picking every day. We eat a little more veggies and can a couple more things, and over the last couple weeks we've really been busy with the tomatoes. So this squeezo that I have has gotten a really good workout, and you can see here I'm getting ready to make some sauce, and I've got a nice mixture of tomatoes that I'm starting with, and I'm just feeding them all through that squeezo there. And I did do a video about making sauce last year if you want to see more, but basically you can see it just takes puree out of them and juice out of them, and spits all the seeds and skins out the ends. I don't like the taste of seeds in my sauce. It gives it a bitter taste to me, so that's why I use this machine pretty much on every bit of sauce that we make. And it's a real easy way to get the all the different mixtures of tomatoes to go through without having to blanch them or peel them or anything else. So we spent many hours this summer just processing tomatoes and cooking them down. And I've just seen before in the videos, I just set up out in my garage and do this because really it does turn into a big mess when you're dealing with over 100 pounds of tomatoes at a time and start trying to cook them down to make the sauce. There you see the wall is all splattered behind it with tomatoes and tomato juice and stuff just from cooking over and stuff. So I'll just clean that up at the end of the season. So this was cooking down a bunch of tomatoes. You have to just cook them for hours. Cook like half of them away, and when you make the sauce. And you see it's dark out already, and I started 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 11 o'clock at night you've got your jars all done and ready to put down in the root cellar. That's just a flag I picked up years ago at Sturgis, hanging on the wall there. So there we are. It's probably 11, 12 o'clock at night now, and the sauce is finally done. Out in the garden here, this was a look at it a couple weeks ago. You can see pretty much those squash plants that I planted on 8 feet centers, like they said. They've just gone wild, and we're starting to get some butternuts and, pick and eat a couple butternuts. But for some reason, the plants have gone crazy. Well, we had that real dry time in the beginning. We actually had a drought where we spent a lot of time watering every day. And then just at the right point in time, the skies broke open, and we've been really getting a lot of rain lately. And there you can see all my tomato plants, all extremely healthy this year. Didn't lose one plant. Basically, every one of them is just providing a bumper crop. The sunflowers there are starting to die down, but as they die down now, we're getting flocks of birds in there to eat the seeds. And I got my first watermelon there a couple weeks ago. First time I've ever tried to grow a watermelon, and there you can see the tomatoes and stuff are really they're just bucketful after bucketful. So I decided to, I thought this first melon was ripe, and I decided to pick it and try it. Now all those flowers that I planted along the fence here, they decided to turn to weeds. I did get some flowers and stuff, but, this is a couple weeks ago. We walk inside the fenced-in area there with the raised beds, and you can see everything has just gone crazy with all the rain that we finally started getting. The pepper plants are all 3 feet tall, and they're all just loaded with peppers. We've been using as many as we can, but there's no way we'll ever use them all this year. I got the beets growing back there, and the eggplants have been doing wonderful. We've been enjoying a lot of fried eggplant lately, which is my favorite, and we've also been putting a lot in the freezer too, so they've been doing good. And peppers the plants are just absolutely loaded this year. No matter how much we try, like I said, we just can't, consume them all. Cucumbers a couple weeks ago were just starting to come to an end finally. I got tired of picking them and carrying them in anyway. And the tomatoes inside there along the fence, they were the early tomatoes that we had and the first to produce. And there's those blue tomatoes turning, but I find that they take a really long time to ripen, and then if you don't pick them within like a day after they ripen, they actually split open and rot. So I'll never plant them again after this year's experience. And there's some of the Anaheims, and there's just bushels of them in these, just a couple plants in the bed here. I think there's 10 plants in the bed, and there's just, a couple bushels of peppers in there on them. And there's the tomatoes again, and the pole beans, we've been really consuming them every day. They've been doing really good. Even though the Japanese beetles destroyed them early on, they really, caught on and came back. And same with the okra. I only put in a couple little okra plants here, but they've been providing us with everything that we need. And, there's one of my Amish paste plum tomatoes. You can see I was getting 1 pound size plum tomatoes, so it doesn't take many to fill up a bucket. And there's those panther edamames that I did the video about last year, and we've been enjoying them, just steaming them up and sucking them out of the shell. And, there's just another bucket of peppers that I picked. And the plants are loaded. There's the habaneras. They're really starting to take off, and there's just thousands on each plant. And they're really a tasty pepper. They're not a sweet pepper, but they have a really good pepper taste. And here's, every day is another cart full of little sugar pie pumpkins. They're starting to get ready. And, this was a day's harvest here. Some more of those Japanese cucumbers and thing of peppers, and always a couple buckets of tomatoes. And just there's a couple more buckets of the small tomatoes. We've been doing a lot of dehydrating on these smaller ones, and they do dehydrate really nice. So that was another day's harvest. Here it is, just spread out a little bit up by the house. So you can kind of see what we've been dealing with from the garden this year. We've never just never had a harvest like this before. Well, I decided to cut my melon, and I had high hopes about it, but I cut it open. They were supposed to be bright orange on the inside, and it was kind of whitish. And I cut out a piece, took a taste, and it is the worst melon I have ever tasted. It tasted like it was planted too close to cucumbers. Kind of tastes like if you took a cucumber and just dipped it in a sugar bowl and tried to eat it. And here's some of the tomatoes. My wife actually tried to do some of them in the oven. Our oven has a dehydrate feature, and this is the first time we tried it, so she did a couple trays, and turns out it stinks compared to the dehydrator. We can dehydrate them in a couple hours, where the oven took 2 days to get them good and dry. And then about a week and a half ago, I started planting the fall crops in the little boxes that I have up by the house. So I just started putting in the seeds so that we'll have a little bit of kale and a little bit of lettuce and stuff like that to enjoy fresh once the weather cools down again, if it ever does. So, that was just it doesn't take long to do, but it does provide, these little boxes do provide an awful lot of veggies out of them. And then, I got them pretty much planted. That didn't take that long at all. And I've got parsley that's going up to seed there that I'll be starting to pick the seeds off of pretty soon. And another trip down to the garden, and another couple buckets of veggies. Some more eggplants getting ready to be battered up and frozen. And so we spent a lot of time preparing eggplants this summer, and just a lot of time also dealing with tomatoes, because it's like every day is a new bunch of tomatoes. And I must say, this year I think we made some of our best sauce ever, because I just take all these buckets, mix everything up, and here I'm just making some puree to can, so I just run everything through this squeezo, no matter what it is, big, little, red, green, purple, and I'll just cook it down to about 50% and just can it up. And there's some more. You can see the walls getting worse as the season goes on. So you really don't want to do a lot of this stuff in the house. So it was kind of like, cooking down and canning tomatoes and sauce and puree. And, we did have a bumper crop of tomatoes this year, which I was really glad after losing them all last year. And there's some of the Anaheims, and I've been freezing them up. I got a freezer, enough of them for making chili all winter, and the squash are starting to come in now, and there's some more beans and edamames and eggplants, and here's another batch of Anaheims getting ready to go into the freezer, be washed up and stuff. And I did actually throw some meat on the grill along with my veggies at times too. So you can see, we've kind of had a bounty this year that we've never seen before. And it does keep us busy. It's like a 24/7 job once the veggies start getting ready. And my wife's getting ready to bread up some more eggplant there. Those little fingers are so sweet and tender. And there they are, all cooked up. And this is getting closer to the end here. And you could see the squash plant's pretty much been destroyed by those little squash bugs and stuff, but starting to be able to see that we did have a good year for the butternuts and whatnot. Everything really looks good. We did lose some of them to animals that went in there and decided to eat half of them, or chew them up, or bugs that decided to bore holes in them and stuff, but there still was plenty left. And the plum tomatoes actually started coming in late, and I put in 6 plants of plum tomatoes, and it turns out that each plant I was able to pick a 5-gallon bucket of plum tomatoes off of now that they're ripe. I forget what the name of these are, but they're a different one that we tried this year, and they are just such a flavorful old-time Italian plum, and I've just never ever seen so many tomatoes on one plant as these plants provided. I'm getting a bucket off each plant basically, and there's another bucket green waiting to turn red. So there's one plant there, and then I actually went through and I wound up picking 3 buckets of them to start processing up and blanch up and actually can. So I got the garage set up there again, and first you blanch them, then you peel them, and then we canned the whole plums like that. And it's back out. It's time to start picking some of these butternuts here. You see the plants are really, this was yesterday, and the plants are pretty much shot, so it's time to really see how many are in there. And I did get a big surprise. Even with all the ones that were damaged by animals and bugs, I still got, I'm going to guess, about 700 pounds of the regular butternuts, the new orange style butternuts, and the Long Island cheese style squash or pumpkin, whatever you want to call them. So it was just an amazing year. I really can't believe it. I expected to get about half the crop. We normally get about half of what we got this year. So all that hot, dry weather that we had in the beginning really gave the plants a good early start to be able to be productive before it got too cold out, I think, for them to flower and stuff like that. So that turned out to be a pretty good job, just trying to dig through these plants. And next week, this week actually, I'm going to start cleaning this all up and getting everything ripped out now, that time of the year. So now we're just kind of trying to figure out some creative ways to use up all these squash. Here you can see there's usually I use a little cart to roll them up, but here I had to get out that I think it's like a 15 cubic foot trailer I've got behind the tractor, and there had to be a good 700 pounds of squash piled up in there. And if you look around the garden, there still are probably 700-800 pounds of tomatoes in there waiting to be picked. There's no way that we can actually use them all. So this week I figure I'm going to start just ripping the plants out and start putting them in the compost. And actually they'll be real good for next year's garden. They'll actually feed all the garden next year, and so they really won't be wasted in the end. Can't really find anybody that wants tomatoes. Well, anyhow, anybody that wants to pick their own tomatoes. People say, yeah, if you pick me some, I'll take them. But forget that. I'm tired of picking tomatoes. You can see the flowers, did pretty good. And beans are good. And those little beads that I rebuilt with that plastic wood, they just stayed amazing. Not one bit of damage at all. So, I'm real happy with that. And here we're still after a couple weeks of picking, getting an unbelievable amount of edamames from just these couple of little plants in that one planter there. And pretty soon we'll be canning up the carrots, but we've been using all along. And hopefully next week I'm gonna get around to picking all my habanero peppers and start trying to figure out how to can them up. You can see there's just, each plant has several hundred little peppers on it right now, and they've just been so productive. And even the red peppers, we're kind of running out of things to do with them. And there's some beets here that are about 6 inches in diameter that we'll be cooking up and making pickled beets next week too, probably. So that'll be on the agenda. And eggplants are still coming in. We're kind of getting tired of them also. But these little finger ones have been my favorite this year. They've just been the sweetest, tastiest, and easiest to deal with. And here's some more of those super sweet peppers. These are little pimiento type peppers. They're just just hundreds of them left. And you can see the cucumbers there are totally shot, gone. I've got to clean that up next. And pepper plants back there are still going crazy. And these are those tricolor beans that I planted, and I just left them in there to grow some more seeds for next year. So next week I'll start pulling some seeds out of there, and still trying to figure out what to do with another 2 bushels of the Anaheim chilies, because they're really just going wild. And these tomatoes, it's just so many tomatoes everywhere that like I said, there's no way that we could possibly use them up this year. Normally we do a good job on them, and with this many plants we'd use them up, but just not this year. And even the okras are going crazy. Just a couple of small plants, and we've just been enjoying them all along, whether it be on the grill or in a gumbo, or they're really good this year. And this is just sort of on the outside of the fence along that row of tomatoes, and you can see there's just more tomatoes than you could possibly use. It's so nice after last year when we didn't have one actual tomato ripen on a plant when they got the blight. Everything was gone. But I guess luckily this year we moved the tomato plants to another section of the garden. There it is. We're shut down for the year, but we moved the plants to another section of the garden, and they really did good. And here's the strike beans we got tired of picking, so I just left some on there to grow big, so we'll have some seeds for next year also. And I've got to start picking lima beans soon also. But here's just some of the varieties of tomatoes that are just leftovers. I mean, they're just extras this year. So I'm guessing that by moving the tomato plants and soaking the stakes in some chlorine water mixture, and it seemed to have solved the blight problems that we had. Hopefully it'll never come back again, but here's some of the plums that are left too. You can see there's just bucket after bucket of them waiting to be picked, but they will provide food for next year's garden. So I got I finally got my trailer filled up with all the squash and pumpkins, and you can see there's a good deal. And I'm starting to get my seeds saved. These are some of the strike beans that I've been drying up now, and those seeds I planted at the top of the hill by the house there, you can see they've really started to catch on lately. And there's another box with some spinach too for some fall spinach. And here's the parsley seeds. We've been starting to pick them and put them away. And just, keep on doing more tomatoes. So as you can see, it was a very productive year. And in the end, it really is a ton of work to plant and grow and put everything up. But I feel it's worth every minute spent on it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.